Hey everybody, welcome back. Jeff Bowie here with Talent Reach, and this is the Unfair Advantage podcast. And today we're talking with people in the tech sales hiring workspace that tend to bring some unfair advantage to your world. Talent Reach is a small boutique agency here in Seattle who focuses on really helping companies and hiring managers navigate through what is really a unique hiring situation right now. Some of it's surrounding frustrations around finding the right talent for the long term, and a lot of it's about mitigating risk. So give me a call or message me after this event, and I'd love to chat and hear more about you. But today, I get to sit down with Jay McBain from Canalys, and I'm super excited because he's one of the smartest guys that I know and connected through, I believe their favorite word is ecosystems. And we're going to sit and chat a little bit about some of what's happening in the in the marketplace in general and how we can navigate that. So Jay, welcome. Super glad to have you.
Thank you for having me. This is going to be fun.
All right, awesome, man. Well, listen, I'm going to turn it over to you. Introduce yourself. Tell us a little bit about you and Canalys, and I'll kick it in from there.
Yeah, absolutely. So Jay McBain, I've been in channels and partnerships ecosystems for pretty close to 30 years now. I've been on the vendor side, working at big companies like IBM and Lenovo. I've been an entrepreneur, started a software company and raised a bunch of money and did some fun things there. Now for 6 years, I've been an analyst. Working with Forrester and now Canalys. Canalys is the largest partnership channel ecosystem research and analyst firm in the world. And it's kind of squarely focused in this place. So talk about unfair advantage, working with third parties, working with partners, and obviously thinking through your organization and talent both internally and paired externally, to serve clients.
And is it the type of thing where you're focused on providing research in general? Do you work independently with agencies? Like how does the model work?
Yeah, so we serve the industry. There's obviously agencies, there's vendors and distributors and partners of all types. Over my shoulder, there's a big Venn diagram of millions of partner types across all 27 industries. I will say that 75% of world trade gets sold through partners. You bought your last car from a dealer. You bought your last TV from a retailer. You bought your last jar of peanut butter from a grocer. So that's one element, looking back over the last 40 years of creating these transactional relationships. But the other one is this non-transactional relationships. The average customer today in B2B, for example, has 7 partners they trust. And maybe one or less of those partners will ever take their money for a product sale. And so they're supporting them in different ways and can provide either help for you in selling or marketing or customer success, or it can provide friction for you if those trusted partners are either not aware of you or pushing back against you. That can cause friction. So to go back to kind of a bigger statistic, 76% of CEOs today think that their current business model will be unrecognizable in 5 years. And ecosystems were the number one reason why. That companies can no longer do it alone. Ford can no longer sell cars because 79% of people require Apple CarPlay to buy a car. And if you don't have it or you don't have the latest version, it doesn't matter what engine or electric system or sheet metal you have. That's now partnerships is key. I could talk about pharmaceuticals, banking, insurance, manufacturing, obviously tech. It is up and down the most critical thing right now in terms of a decade of the ecosystem or a decade in where we can't do it alone.
And are we seeing a shift recently towards this? Obviously, anybody in B2B sales knows there's no longer a simple sale. There hasn't been a simple sale for a long time. There's always stakeholders involved. You've always got to build this trust with other people. But what you're saying is it's much bigger than that. It's not just me being able to communicate with the CFO and the head of tech and a buyer. It's other influencers involved in their ecosystem.
Yeah, so in a considered purchase today, which a B2B sale would fall into, kind of like on the consumer side, when you buy a car, when you buy a mattress or something that costs money and makes you think about it, there are on average 28 moments that a consumer or a business customer will spend before purchasing. And some of those moments are spent with sales, but usually some of the later moments.
Mhm.
The last thing you want to do as a consumer is go out to the world and say, hey, I want to buy a car, and have 62 manufacturers, come in and blast your email and blast your, social feeds, and having 365 choices, which is how many brands of cars you have to choose from. So you want to do your research. And,
Right.
and this is where the complication is. In these 28 moments, 81% of you might start with a Google search to kind of start the journey. And maybe it's a Bing Chat GPT search now.
Right.
The fact of the matter is, the ebooks you read, the white papers, the podcasts like this one you listen to, all these early moments are usually owned by others. And so of those 28 moments, the best sales and marketing teams in the world working at the most, mature companies might earn 3 or 4 of those 28 moments. And so the rest of the moments are either, could be supportive of you if you knew who owned those moments. For example, in cars again, you happen to read Motor Trend magazine, you go to YouTube, watch a vlogger, put 2 cars on a racetrack together, and, then you go and read as much as you can, and you go through a bunch of Edmunds and other sites that are building your skills. So at some point midway through the journey, you've got 365 cars down to maybe a couple. And then you go to the manufacturer's website and configure, price, quote that car, color it, put your rims on it, try to figure out the pricing models. And even at that point, you're not ready to talk to sales. I might want to go and download the invoice price at the dealer, so I know what I'm working with. I want to go and download their back-end rebates, so I know, what spiffs they're working this month. So by the time I do hit the dealer, the sales rep, I know much more about the car and the technology. I know much more about the deal than the sales manager even does. But they sit me down for 8 hours, still in air quotes, trying to get me the deal. And,
Right.
and I know within $100 when I walk in exactly how it's going to play out.
We'll talk about it like an industry that's super far behind. So who's catching up? Like, we work a lot with B2B SaaS, for example, an enterprise sale. Similar thing seems to apply. Are you seeing the sales hires or building teams move away from a, I don't know, SDR model and more towards a consultative person at the very end of that sale who gets it? That you've come to me, already done your research, you've already had these 28 touches, or are we still stuck?
Yeah. So by the time the customers got to you, they've kind of waded through a market. If you want to talk B2B SaaS, there's 200,000 ISVs in the market. So if you're talking to, a CMO, the latest MarTech stack has 9,932 MarTech and ad tech solutions on it. So obviously the salespeople that work for those 10,000 companies would love to get into the deal early. The last thing the buyer wants to do is invite in 10,000 people to blast them in their sales process.
What, you don't have 15 minutes of my time? 15 minutes of your time? Talk to me?
So, yeah, 15 minutes times
9,000?
10,000. 15 minutes times 10,000 is never a good equation. Yeah. So guess what happens? I'm going to go in and read about my specific situation as a B2B SaaS buyer. Who am I? Like, what department do I work in? What level of buyer am I in the committee? And then second, what industry, or better yet, what sub-industry am I in? Mm-hmm. I want to start narrowing down these 200,000 choices I've got. So here I am, a marketing buyer. I work in a sub-industry, which is a mid-sized bank. Third, the mid-sized bank happens to be in Scotland. Fourth, my mid-sized bank in Scotland, happens to have, 120 employees and 3 branches. So that's the segment sector that we're in. We're not an enterprise bank. We're not Bank of America or Wells Fargo here.
Okay.
And then next is product areas. I'm trying to solve attribution, as I'm trying to figure out what's happening in those early 28 moments. So that's where I'm narrowing in from a product perspective. And then you just start looking at the models. How am I trying to solve this? Am I trying to solve this via technology? Am I trying to solve this via services, to hire an agency to come and help, connect the dots? How am I going to go? So the business model of how I'm trying to solve it, I just answered 6 questions to get me down from 200,000 choices to 5 or 3. That's when
happens pretty quickly.
out to sales.
So it happens pretty quickly, is what you're saying. Like that research can be done by somebody who's an experienced buyer pretty, within days.
Well, within minutes. I mean, again, it starts with a Google search, and now ChatGPT will come back with a 500-word report on what I should be thinking about.
Okay.
And that's going to continue to improve. So those early moments are everything. And so if I'm trying to sell, so if I'm in sales or if I'm in marketing and I'm trying to sell, and in my, my TAM, in my target buyer, if I happen to have mid-sized banks in Scotland as one of my target markets, guess what? I want to double click on that buyer and ask 3 questions. What do I read / listen to?
Mm-hmm.
2, where do I go? And then 3, who do I follow? And by answering those 3 questions, I'm actually ducking into their 28 moments. I can actually start predicting. I can do a Google search in Glasgow or Inverness, Scotland, and I can kind of mock it up via a simple virtual VPN tool to make it seem like I'm there. And I can start following the breadcrumbs of what gets presented on page 1 of Google, what ChatGPT might tell me to do early in the journey, and guide me to where the ebooks and the white papers and the podcasts and the associations and all the different things, the social groups and the things I'm going to do to get smart. Every single owner of every one of those things can either help me or hurt me in getting to that target market. And by the way, as a partnership expert, I would say that I would reach out to all of them, offer an olive branch and say, hey, that ebook I'm quantifying is really important to my customer. What would it take for us to work together and maybe write another ebook or 5? And what would that endorsement look like? How would we kind of enrich that customer with more information? And if I can take over the first 24 of those 28 moments in a positive way, the customer's going to land at sales already warmed up and already have us in that top 3 window, whether it's an RFP, which never happens in SaaS, or in a pilot, which we're going to be there and well positioned.
Interesting. So I think we've very quickly come to sort of, an unfair advantage. If you're hiring for this particular person, this is not the most common conversation that I have with hiring managers. So how does a hiring manager find this person? What's sort of a way to say, yeah, I like what Jay's saying. Let's do more of that. But I don't know the first thing about how do I get them on my team.
Yeah, I mean, the first thing I'd be adding to my automated resume and LinkedIn checkers is for the word channels, partnerships, ecosystems.
Somebody who already understands the fact that it's
working. Or maybe a 4th word I'd search for is alliances. So that means that somebody in their past has had a job of working with third parties and understanding the intricacies of doing that, how to recruit them, onboard them, how to educate, train, certify, build competencies, how to incent them and motivate them and drive loyalty, how to co-sell and co-market. I want those skills would be great on a resume. When I'm in an interview, I'd want to be asking questions about how you work with others. I mentioned at the outset, 75% of world trade, it flows indirectly.
Yeah.
The money flows through others. So in your history of working, how have you worked through dealers and agencies? How have you worked through brokers and resellers and retailers, whichever industry you're in, whichever job role? But tell me, outside of your company, what experience you have in this broader ecosystem that, very much influences how your customer is going to make their decisions and selections.
And so what about people who are experienced with actual partners, like, so many, VARs or, consultants that carry your competitors as well? Is there a sort of a secret to getting them on your side, making sure that you're ahead of the game?
Well, there is. And so if I'm a hiring manager, I want to know where I'm hiring into, of course. I could be hiring into marketing. I could be hiring into sales. I could be hiring into customer success. Those are the three parts of the customer journey: getting them to the dance, getting them on the dance floor, and then keeping them dancing all night long. There's also when I'm hiring for product and engineering, when I'm hiring for operations and strategy, when I'm hiring for finance. So these are all the areas that have a lot of third-party ecosystem presence around them. And so I'll want to be making sure that if I'm, again, hiring in marketing, I'm talking about maybe agency work. I'm working on all these affiliates, affinity, advocate, ambassador type of programs, influencers, super connectors. These are the questions I'm asking. If I'm hiring into sales, I'm asking questions about, retail, resell, dealers, agents, brokers, whichever industry you're in. I'm asking about marketplaces now. Marketplaces are growing at 86%. McKinsey thinks marketplaces, B2B marketplaces, are going to be worth 17 trillion with a T by 2030. So I want marketplace skills.
Define marketplace. Break it down, please.
So a digital marketplace, if you're a consumer, is Amazon.com, which is took over our lives in COVID, where 1/3 the U.S. economy was running through marketplaces.
Right. Huge.
Post-COVID, does that return to normal? No. Every category, every considered purchase we're talking about keeps growing. Every category of product keeps growing in terms of marketplaces. It's the future. And our buyer, our B2B buyer, by the way, is turning into a majority millennial within a couple of years. And this is the way that millennials buy. So a cloud marketplace in B2B SaaS, that could be AWS, Microsoft, Google, it could be Salesforce, ServiceNow, Workday, HubSpot. It could be IBM, SAP, Oracle. So those digital marketplaces we're calling at $45 billion now by 2025 and growing at 84% compounded. So it's absolutely the fastest way that money is changing hands now. And it's really for the next decade where I want to be hiring into people that recognize and have those skills at that point of sale.
Yeah.
That's for most companies an indirect sale. If you sell through Amazon or if you sell through AWS in the B2B space, that's an indirect sale, but it happens to be going through a marketplace. And so I need skills around how to make that work and, stay ahead of our competitors who are also investing in this space. And there's all that type of thing. Even on direct deals, there are still those 7 partners that your customer trusts. And even though they're not taking the money, they might have their finger on the trigger. 24% of marketplace deals that go direct have a partner clicking buy on behalf of the customer. So recognizing even in a direct deal that those 7 partners are very influential and either can provide help or friction in your buyer's process are important. Same thing for customer success, every 30 days forever. Implementations, integrations, sticky, enrichment, upsell, cross-sell. All that, 76% of companies are going towards subscription and consumption models. B2B SaaS is 100% there already. And guess what? Getting the initial purchase is getting the first 30 days with the customer. And now how to get a customer for life really represents those 7 partners that are trusted, the work that they're doing to make you sticky in that customer. And so it never ends. This partnership strategy before, during, and after the initial transaction never ends. If you're a SaaS company, you built your product in an ecosystem. You built your product on AWS, Microsoft, or Google. You probably built your product around a SaaS platform like Salesforce, ServiceNow, Workday, Marketo, NetSuite, HubSpot, etc. So you grew up in an ecosystem. You have to be API first. You have to be SDK first. Like partnerships are everything now in product strategy. And then alliances, strategic business alliances, how you work with the system integrators like Accenture and Deloitte, how you work with all different kinds of other ISVs. That's important too. B2B SaaS, the average deal today has 7 ISVs in one deal. That's what every deal at Salesforce and every deal at AWS, every security deal today looks like. 7 layers, 7 different players. So this is everywhere in your hiring. This is everywhere in your company, from the mailroom to the CEO to the board should have partnership friendly skills and obviously a recognition that we can't do it alone.
Yeah, yeah. And this I ran across this morning. I'll show it to you. As a futurist, I'd love to sort of hear your take on, the fact that live stream shopping is a thing that I hadn't really even thought about. Is that it's related, but talk to me about sort of where we're headed in this world. Is this a marketplace that's worth paying attention to?
Yeah, it absolutely is. So, in the US, traditionally, we've called it omnichannel. And we've thought about it almost device specific, like how do I work on my mobile? How do I work on my desktop browser? Now, how do I work with a headset, like, a Meta type headset or a HoloLens or something? So we're trying to think of it device specific. But my daughter, for example, works for Lululemon, which is a high-end retailer of yoga pants and other things that most people know. They're thinking about this buying, whether it's in store. It doesn't mean all your friends have to be in store. When you
Right.
try on something, they can literally walk around you, VR, AR, or MR, virtual reality, augmented reality, or mixed reality. And they could be at the store with you. They could be 5,000 miles away. It doesn't matter. Everything becomes part of that kind of mixed reality world. And so whether you're in store trying it on, whether you're at home trying it on virtually, whether you're, it doesn't matter, the community of people around you that augment your buying decision, much like B2B. It just all becomes neutral in terms of how that is served up. And that's that metaverse version of what Meta's chasing and getting criticized for the next 10 years. But that's the next version of the internet,
Yeah.
is that it becomes much more three-dimensional. And China, with different applications and obviously some of these super apps that include payments and e-commerce and all kinds of things, and now virtual reality and things, they're further ahead as a society than we are just looking at omnichannel.
Interesting. Okay, so real quick, back to some of the hiring. We're seeing tons of news about layoffs and stuff, but we're also seeing interesting things with the economy and job openings, unemployment, things like that. When we chatted earlier, you'd used the term sort of future proofing. Are we hiring future friendly people into our organizations? Talk to me a little bit about like what that means and how do we do that?
Yeah, so just in tech alone, there's been 260,000 layoffs in the last 4 months. I start my day at layoffs.fyi and just check out, who the daily announcements are that are, reducing by 9%, the size of their companies. But you double click into kind of what kind of talent is coming into the market. This isn't traditional layoffs. These are not, let's just take out our low performers. What's happening when you take out 9% of your company is you're taking out whole departments.
Yeah.
And when you take out a department that might be working on a moonshot, like, some of these big tech companies are working literally on moonshots, rockets and self-driving cars. And they got themselves, we haven't had a recession in 14 years. And these companies have been just growing so fast that they got a little bit loose in terms of chasing everything, every emerging tech down.
Mm-hmm.
And so what happened now is, the belts are tightening. So entire departments, which have A, B, and C players in them, are getting let go.
Yeah,
and so you do have people hitting the street, but these aren't traditional, because, if you're on a moonshot creating self-driving car technology and you've been let go as a department, you're not going to cross industries that easily. Your ability to sell self-driving isn't to a consumer yet. It's, working with Tesla and Uber and others, so more in alliances world. So we got to be careful with, some of the talent that's out there. Just seeing that they worked at Google or seeing that they worked at Amazon or Microsoft isn't enough anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Say that they've got these really broad skills. So that's one thing. But second is we've got an amazing level of talent that is now available, which a year ago, if we were having this talk, wasn't available. So we had the problem of a talent shortage and millions of open jobs. Now we've got a pretty good set of talent that's out there, but in the future friendly sense, what does that really mean? Somebody that's very digitally versed that can work through, some of the things we talked about.
Yeah.
In terms of, working in a virtual sense or a mixed or augmented sense is really important. Somebody that works that is partner friendly. I would say that every department and every hire now has a partner story next to it, becomes more important than just having people that sit inside a boardroom in a hermetically sealed chamber and make decisions. We've got to have people that, and it doesn't mean you have to hire extroverts. It just means you have to hire people that are good at managing kind of broader teams that may not report to you. This is an important thing when working with partners, is they have their own companies, they have their own mission, and they don't live to serve you.
Right.
You've got to figure out situations. Again, it doesn't matter where you are, marketing, sales, customer success, product, strategy, it doesn't matter where you are in the organization. You always have to be thinking in a 1 + 1 = 3. There is no win-lose in partnerships. So framing up your opportunities to both, raise all boats is what you're always thinking. And that's a skill. It's something that, can be learned, it can be trained, and it's a skill that somebody can, and you can ask for in an interview and look for in a resume that is different than maybe, a more psychological, ingrained thing.
Yeah. And selling into or building those relationships with an ISV is both challenging at the same time. As I did some of the trainings in some of this world. Also, the bar is pretty low, so there's a lot of opportunity to be on the good side and really have people recognize that you're somebody that they and should work with if you're willing to do the effort.
So here's a good example is Microsoft, who's had a channel for 40 years, since August the 12th, 1981, the first IBM PC. But that channel's going through a lot of changes. There's 470,000 partners out there that sell Microsoft. In the old days, like the Office and now the Microsoft 365 and kind of the more desktop Windows type of products, where now with Azure and some of their newer cloud technologies, maybe only 30% of it is resold. So it's changing from that, 90% in the past to now maybe only 30%. But they've changed gears, and as a company, they talk about what we'll call partner assist. So they track 96% of their deals, and this is the second biggest company in the world behind Apple. 96% of their deals are partner assisted. Before, during, or after the transaction, within the product, within the strategy and alliances, business alliance, they're everywhere. So when you work at Microsoft, the first day on the job, again, if you're in the mailroom right out of college, or if you're the CEO and everybody in between, the hundreds of thousands of people in between, you're just partner friendly.
Yeah.
In finance, in HR, in operations, in strategy, there's no conversation that happens in Redmond that doesn't have the 7 trusted partners at every client conversation as a part of it.
So hire people from Microsoft?
Well, Microsoft is one of those companies that's adding, the people that have left Microsoft in the latest downsizing, are very, well positioned because of that culture. And that's where AWS, which got outsold or outgrown by Microsoft for 12 straight quarters, felt that it was more of a partnership issue in that they weren't as friendly or as broad in terms of a channel, and have changed that around, hired new leadership, orchestrated new language. And now AWS is, kind of bridging that gap and using that partnership strategy. Google went all in to compete with the other two, 100% all in partners and channel to go do that. So the companies that win, every single Fortune 500 tech company, for example, SaaS or not, are ecosystem partnership friendly companies. You can't win without it. And you can go direct for a while, from startup stage to a certain level of growth. But if you want to hit that next level, it's never been done without partners. Dell is a good example. Started direct, got the religion later on, and now is a $104 billion company that's pretty close to 58% indirect. So everybody gets it over time.
And what was the statistic you gave me earlier? CEOs say 70-something% of their business is going That's not currently part of channels going that way. What was that statistic?
Well, there's two. 75% of world trade goes indirect. If you're
Yeah.
in the tech channel, for example, technology industry, the 4.5 trillion the businesses and governments spend on tech, 73.3% of it goes indirect. And the
Currently.
second number was 76% of CEOs think their current business model will be unrecognizable.
There we go.
And so that number is interesting because this is the move to either subscription or consumption models.
Mm-hmm.
Companies like HP, Cisco, Dell, Lenovo, others have committed 100% to these models now. The product-led growth, which a lot of B2B SaaS is in this world of, product-led growth, like a Zoom or a Dropbox, type of world. You've got different models around marketplaces and things. So these are just disruptive business models that as consumers, as B2B customers, our world is flipping for us, whether we like it or not, into a monthly recurring, right from our toothbrush to our car, up through every piece of software, hardware, and service that we buy.
So if you pull out your crystal ball, what does it mean for the future of tech, say, in the next 12 to 18 months? We've got, where are we headed with the economy? We've obviously, you seem to have indicated that you believe that the layoffs are smart, if not, broad,
and
maybe not coming back. But where are we headed with all this in 12 to 18 months?
Yeah. And by the way, the last thing I'll say on layoffs is every one of these companies that have had these, 10 or 12,000, announcements have added hundreds of thousands of people during the pandemic. So this is literally not even a haircut.
Yeah.
This is, this is just like clipping the bangs a little bit, but it has no impact. Like if you look at the LinkedIn growth over 2 and 1 year, histories, this barely just flattens the curve a little bit in terms of how grossly, over hiring these companies have been.
Right.
So that's a point. So it's made some sensational headlines, but when you actually look at the data, it's just it's unbelievable how
the same can't be true. It can't be said for the smaller companies, the sub 5,000 person companies who are laying off, 10, 15% of, maybe not that many. But,
that's a difference, but we're on the end of a 14-year bubble.
Yeah.
So I remind, people that there are millennials that are turning 40 this year that have never been through a downturn.
Wow.
Since college. And that's incredible to think about because, early in my career at IBM, I think we had a layoff every year.
Okay. Yeah.
And so this is a new world and you see it online. I mean, a bunch of people that are not 25, but literally 40 that are going through this first emotional connection where your company wasn't your family.
Yeah.
And maybe your company doesn't care about you the way you thought they did with the French chef and the daily massages and all this other wonderful sleep pods. This is more of a transactional nature with your company, and maybe you should, think differently, but they've never been through that. So this is a long time and probably the longest bubble we've ever had in the history of the tech industry. So when we look back to 2008, when we look back to 2001, two things around the world economy and recession is the technology industry pulled the world out of recession.
Mm-hmm.
And we're geared up, and we're not in recession yet. We're kind of pre-recession, but we're gearing up to do that again. Companies invest in automation. They invest in the workflows, the business logic, the processes that will take them and make them more efficient. And every company in every industry is becoming a tech company. Software is eating the world. It's going to happen again. So when we interview partners, when we interview vendors and distributors and everybody in the industry, they all say that they're investing more during this time in marketing and in hiring to come out of this stronger, because they truly believe that, once we shake up a lot of these macroeconomic things that we've been through, it'll be the tech industry again at the tip of the spear in whether it's late in 23 or early in 24, we're going to be back to those growth rates and maybe start up a new 14-year bubble.
Love it. Love it. All right. So I don't think we have time to jump into sort of the chat GPT unless you've got anything burning that you've got to get off your chest.
I use it every day.
Generative AI change, because that seems to be the tip of the spear, potentially.
Yeah, I mean, they're talking today about disrupting search. And, for the first time in a long, long time, Google being threatened on search. But there's a much broader thing here is when you look at employment, There's work done over the last decade talking about the future of employment. And, there's reports that say 47% of American jobs are at risk given technology that's already shipping. And so from a hiring perspective, you can break down every job in America. There's BBC in the UK. I mean, these are global studies as well. They're all similar, about half of all jobs. So the number one job in North America is truck driving. If you take the 3.5 million truck drivers and remind them that there's now 10 million miles of self-driving trucks from Tesla and Volvo and others, mostly on the West Coast, without an accident yet, knock on wood, because it would be on the front page of the newspaper.
Immediately, yeah.
Immediately, like every Tesla accident is. But even Tesla and self-driving, which, they don't have the full implementation, and it's not the right technology because they're not including LiDAR and radar and everything else. But even Tesla self-driving today is 10 times safer than human. So if I took away the truck driving industry and kind of replaced the long haul with self-driving, there are millions of jobs that are at risk.
Yeah.
When you look at, retail, which would be the second one with kiosks and everything else, when I look at all the way down the list of the top jobs, that's how you get to the 47% number. The one that ChatGPT puts at risk is everyone that's graduating college. Every paralegal, every junior accountant, every junior tech person in my industry, every junior research assistant. ChatGPT can write me a report, and again, I use it every day. So when I ask it, why is sustainability lagging in the United States versus Europe, it writes me a 1,000-page essay that right now passes a course at Harvard, gets into Wharton, and gets me a job at Google. So it's already at that level, and it only sucked in information up until 2021. It's not connected today to the internet. So I worked at IBM during the Deep Blue days, playing Gary Kasparov at chess, and then the days leading up to Watson, winning at Jeopardy. If you connect ChatGPT to the internet, which is obviously what Microsoft and Bing is going to do, now you combine this idea of Harvard level passing grades with now connection to things that are happening minutes ago on Twitter. This becomes something that for anyone that's 25 years old through maybe 35 is going to compete for their jobs, which is a big challenge in your industry.
Yeah. It's we talk a lot about the way that frontline sales and the whole BDR model is going to be completely different when you can write a 16 part sequence of outreach that looks just as good as anybody else. Just questions to be had.
Yeah, so it's going to be people that are smarter, because there's going to be, you think there's a lot of noise and clutter right now, which there is. You multiply that by 1,000. So it's just going to be off the charts. So it's going to create new jobs. And that's what, technology's always done. And the new jobs are going to be people that, anything, any AI engine can write a good 600-word blog. Maybe you tweak it a little bit, make it, 10% better, 20% better. But the fact is how does that blog come to life? Who clicks on it? Who determines what that title is in the A/B testing? That's probably going to be AI driven. But in the end, how do you get it placed? Through influencers and super connectors and trustworthy sources, and things are going to die on the vine much more than they ever have.
Yeah.
Today, most things die on the vine. Really well pixel perfect ebooks and stuff never get anybody to read them. So the experts of the future are not the content creators, much more the content deliverers to the market, and figuring out ways through
back
the
to
watering holes, the different markets, the different influencers and super connectors, and the people that connect those dots, which I'll repeat is a partnership job.
Yep.
Are going to be the people successful in this new world.
Totally. Wrap it up. What book or books, resources should people be reading? Hiring managers, if they want to understand how to train people in the partnership ecosystem. It could, because I don't know if you know this, but it's a strange world to most people in B2B sales.
It is. There's probably 100 books that have been written, in the last couple of years, kind of broadening this idea of ecosystems and broadening this world of partnerships. I mean, there's a number of them that I would recommend, but there's also about 1,000 watering holes. There's now, magazines dedicated to these new concepts. There's peer groups, whichever way you like to learn, podcasts, associations, different events dedicated to this. Obviously, a whole vendor stack over my shoulder of 223 companies that are innovating and raising billions of dollars. So there's a whole ecosystem around ecosystems. How's that for meta? But you can tie into this, and I read very few books.
Okay.
As an analyst. I probably read a book a day, but in chunks across the internet, trying to connect dots.
Yeah.
And like everyone, I have the trusted sources of the 5 emails that I click on in the morning out of the 300 that I get. And there's places and voices I listen to that are super connected influencers that I know will put the right spin or put a relevant spin for me. And so I'm much more digital than I am. Anything that ever hits a book is already 6 months usually out of date.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And this world's moving so quickly that any book published today has missed the last 4 months of 260,000 layoffs.
So I'm a hiring manager. I need to subscribe to what newsletter?
Well, I would.
I realize there's 1,000. Give me your favorite.
Yeah, in the ecosystem world, I mean, there's Partner Hacker, which is a great little magazine that is cutting into this. In the peer group communities, there's partnership leaders, and the Cloud Software Association are doing a good job in B2B SaaS. All these things are B2B SaaS.
Okay.
In the world of events, they're kicking off meetups and different kinds of events, with 500 plus people. There's online events with 4,000 to 5,000 people. There's a lot of really big marketing and sales super connectors that are coming into the partnership space. This is the decade of the ecosystem. And, it won't be far on a simple Google search or a simple ChatGPT question that you won't find some good resources that serve you in the way you like to learn. Listen, read, attend, or follow. It'll serve you whichever way you want to learn.
Right on. I appreciate that. Okay, so if anybody wants to get a hold of you, do you mind if I throw your LinkedIn link up here?
Yeah, I think I have 3 screens running here, and there's 20 different ways. If you want to send a LinkedIn message or tweet at me or send me a Facebook, I mean, there's just so many ways that I respond to them all and I see them all. So I'm a zero inbox person as well. So I don't go to sleep with any open red circles on my iPhone.
Do you sleep is the question.
I do. 8 hours a night tracked.
Right on. Very good. So I recommend just following Jay. You're a great resource for all of these things I have been asking about. I would say you should have said follow me when I asked, but I'll say that's what we should be doing. But it's been outstanding. My head is full, and I really appreciate you taking the time to chat with me. Hopefully you'll come back and do it again soon.
Will do. Thanks everyone. Take care.
All right. Take care, everybody.